We're now ready for our very last review item, and that is called matrix inversion. And we've got the tools we need now to do that. We understand rank, and we understand the idea of a singular matrix or a non-singular matrix. And we know now that matrix inversion can only happen if your matrix is of full rank. With that, we will review what an inverse is and show an example of creating a inverse using a 2 by 2 matrix. First of all, we have our matrix living in the real world of square matrices, and we will identify the dimension as being n by n. As usual, we're trying to solve the system ax equals b. It could be that we have more than one b vector of interest, but a is not changing. And we'd like to see what happens to the solution x for a whole variety of b values. That is the situation that would make an inverse somewhat useful. But to define that inverse, what we need to do is find some matrix B such that if you take B times A, you get the identity. If that occurs, then that matrix is denoted as A inverse with a superscript, and it is unique. There's only one such inverse for a matrix, and that matrix, of course, has to be of full rank. So given that we have found this inverse, if we take A inverse times A, we get the identity. But very happily, in the case of an inverse, we get to use our commutative rule, which normally doesn't work. So A times A inverse is also equal to the identity. So if we're trying to solve AX equals B, we can pre-multiply that equation on both sides by A inverse, and that will allow us to replace the A inverse A by the identity. And an identity times a vector is just that vector, and therefore the solution is A inverse times B. This is why it's useful to have an inverse if your B's are changing. In other words, if you have more than one B of interest to solve the system. You don't have to keep reproducing your A inverse. So let's take a 2 by 2 equation and see what we can do with that. And we'll form the inverse using the normal Gaussian reduction method that we've been using all along. But this time, instead of augmenting our matrix with the B vector on the right, we're going to augment our matrix with the identity. So here's the same 2 by 2 that we've looked at earlier in the course. And instead of putting the B vector over here, we put the identity. And we will do the same row reductions we did before, but this time carrying those row reductions through the augmented matrix, through this identity matrix that's augmented to A. So we do the normal R1 minus R2 as we did last time, giving us a 1 in the upper left-hand corner, but you see we are now impacting the identity matrix with the same transformation. We are now going to take the second row and subtract twice the first, because when we do, we get a 0 in the lower left-hand corner. We'll still go ahead and divide by 10, even though it's not as pretty as it was last time, because our value before was a 20, which really worked nicely. But in this case, we're going to end up with some fractions. So as we do that, we just have to live with the fractions, and we finally add 3 times row 2 to row 1 in order to make the final reduction into the reduced echelon form, thus yielding the identity matrix now on the left. Those series of transformations produce the inverse on the right, and I'm going to leave proof of that to our linear algebra course where we spent a lot more time at it. But that mechanically is how we would go about finding our inverse. Now, if we were interested in reproducing this 2 by 2 inverse process using a completely generic 2 by 2, we could do that. And again, if you remember from your linear algebra class, there was a formula that we had that allowed us to write down immediately what that inverse was. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to what's in the denominator of this fraction. What we see here in the denominator is something called the determinant. The only way A inverse can end up being non-defined is if this denominator is 0. In other words, if the determinant is equal to 0. everything else is going to work, which means that a criteria for a inverse to exist, along with being non-singular, is that its determinant must not be zero. And those end up becoming what we call equivalent statements. The determinant is noted as a DET of A, or you can take the matrix A and put vertical bars on either side of it, which is another equally good notation for the determinant. Be a little careful though, this does not mean absolute value. Determinants can be negative, so this has nothing to do with absolute value. This is the determinant process that we're using. Now let's generalize that to any matrix. And without proof, I will just tell you that if you get a determinant of a matrix of any size equal to 0, then it's singular and you're not going to be able to get an inverse. You're not going to get a unique solution. All those things happen at once. So let's give ourselves a shot at trying our hand at a 3x3 and see if we can solve that. And we'll just do Gaussian reduction to see if we can solve this system. So give me a solution by augmenting the matrix A with the B vector and take it to echelon form. Determine if, in fact, it's singular or not. And if it's not singular, then go all the way to reduced echelon form and find the vector. After you do that, tell me what the rank of A is, give a reason for your answer, and tell me how many solutions exist for the system. And I want a reason for that. So that's fairly straightforward, a mechanical exercise. Question 2 is extra credit. And I would like you to now assume A is an arbitrary matrix. It is not equal to this 3x3 we have up above. It could be anything at all. And I want you to prove that if you construct A transpose times A, then B is necessarily symmetric. Take a look at problem 1, and if you'd like, also the extra credit in problem 2. And that might give you a little bit of practice using a manual operation of vectors and matrices before we go off and use our numerical techniques with an algorithm. So we finally got through all of our review. We now have been reminded of everything out of our linear algebra course that we're going to need for the rest of this section, and we'll start applying some numerical techniques with maybe some even different objectives starting next time.